And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon. Today I am talking with Dr. Carrie Graham. And Dr. Graham, thank you for spending some time with me this morning.
Oh my goodness, Michael, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to have a conversation with you about wherever the conversation goes.
That's awesome. Well, based on our pre-podcast conversation, it might go back to the 80s, where things were a lot easier with less technology, but it may or may not. Because what you do will apply to the 80s as much as it does today and as much as it will in 10 or 20 years, actually. So Dr. Graham helps organizations, businesses, team members, really train team members to stay engaged and growing so we don't become lackadaisical and lose interest in blah. So we're going to talk a lot about training and development and all that. So tell me, Dr. Graham, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I love it because it gives me an opportunity to reflect, right? I actually started my career in healthcare. So I was a healthcare provider. And as a result of that, I had to maintain my board certification, attending trainings, annual conferences, state level trainings. And over the years, the more experienced and skilled I got, I felt like the worse the trainings became. They were not meeting my needs. It was
Wow.
a repeat of the same old, same old. And so as the years went on, I ended up getting my PhD in adult learning and workplace learning. And with that, I realized part of the problem and the frustration that I was having as a learner or as an audience member was the design, the focus, the development, as well as the facilitation of those trainings years on. So, as someone new to an organization or early on in their career, those trainings really do provide a lot of insight and information, but there's that tipping point where they just start falling flat.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a very interesting because as soon as you said that, it just took me back to my days in corporate America, and I was with a ministry, an international ministry, and they would do trainings, and yeah, they just became boring. It's
Yeah.
like, I would think to myself about the trainer. I'm like, aren't you excited about this? It doesn't sound like it. And I would check out and do other things, unfortunately, because it's sad because I wasn't gaining value, and it was like, oh,
Right.
another 90-minute meeting. Yippee.
Yep.
So let's talk about that because that's unfortunately that's pretty common
Yeah.
everywhere. Number one, but
Everywhere.
so let's talk about how do you engage with businesses and organizations and people to change that.
Yeah, yeah. So as I mentioned, my PhD is in adult learning specifically.
Okay.
So one of the very first conversations, when people come to me, they already have their content. They're looking for a refresh, a reorganization, or they have content and it hasn't been put together just yet.
Okay.
So one of the very first conversations that I have with them is around the end user. So who's the learner? Who's going to be in the audience? What are the expected outcomes? And it's not simply a conversation around demographics. Like we actually dig deeper. And it's those deeper questions that I ask my clients that they're like, oh, oh, I see where you're going with this, right? So it's really focusing on the end user as a learner and not simply as a
A,
trainee.
or a recipient of information.
Right. And so that's like the very first thing that we do. The second thing that we do is I start looking at, and I work with my clients to look at how is the content designed? Does it address the variances in the audience, right? So if it's a work environment, you might have someone who's a brand new employee, but they've got 10, 15 years experience. You might have someone right out of school, and then you might have another individual they're just counting down the days to retirement. It's all three of those people are attending the same training, you can't just throw it and hope that that they all pick it up. So it's how are we organizing the training and then facilitating it in a way that speaks to each of those individual needs and provides them the skill or the information to do whatever it is that's the proposed outcome.
Yeah, that's very cool. So it's very similar to in marketing. We always say, you start with the who, start with your audience
Yeah.
and see what their needs are. And if you can solve their needs, then craft your message towards that audience. And too many times I presume in organizations when they're creating trainings, the focus really is on the training and the company. This is what we're trying to communicate.
Yeah, yeah. Sadly, it's on two things. It's on that, the content, or it's on the individual, right? So who is the trainer? Who is the facilitator? And this is where you see organizations bringing in entertainers, right? Or big names, and I call it edutainment. It's not really going to do the thing that you want to achieve. And so I encourage people to get away from that. It has its place, but for the most part, no. Let's get away from that model.
Yeah, and that's good because if you really want a growing environment, a culture that your members, you're actually developing your team members to
Mhm.
to grow personally, professionally, to achieve
Yes,
more and all of that. They want a training environment. And if you're not going to
absolutely.
provide it, they're going to find it somewhere else because I mean they're all over the place on the internet, right? So why don't
Absolutely.
you add value and retain your team members because you're providing a pathway of ongoing training that's actually compelling and practical and useful, right?
Right. Well, Michael, you bring me to the reason why I do the work, right? So not only out of frustration from those years of being in training, but I think if you think about it, employees, volunteers spend so much time in that work environment. And if they are attending a training that they roll their eyes at, look at their watch, fall asleep, while their work is continuing to pile up, you are actually depleting them. And so now they are frustrated, they're resentful. 8 hours of that, and now they're going to go home. They're not their best selves for their loved ones, themselves, or their community. And so that is really the passion and why I do this work. Yes, I want to help the businesses and organizations, but more importantly, I'm thinking about that lifestyle and internal growth of the individual. That's what really matters.
Yeah, and that when done well becomes contagious because they will
It's,
infect those around them, not only in the company but at home and church and
yeah,
other places as well. So you get to have this multiplicity effect, right? Talk
absolutely.
about some of the ways that you work with organizations. Is it online coaching? Is it you come in and speak? Is it what I mean, what are some of the different ways you can work with companies?
Yeah, so this goes back to my training and focusing on the needs of my clients. And so oftentimes, my clients, we work online, right? An online experience. However, I actually have had clients where I've gone on site and worked with their team for implementation and development. I love to have live conversations with people. So going to on site to talk to a training team is also something that I'm interested in. So as a business owner, I don't limit myself, and people will often say, oh, you should niche, narrow down. And for me, the narrowing is what is your specific need?
Yeah.
That's the narrowing.
Yeah, and that's really good because so many times as you're developing training programs or thinking about team development, you really don't know because I'm sure there are a lot of voices out there saying you should do this or buy this program.
Yeah,
And business owners, I mean, we just haven't been trained and taught in these types of realms. And I think sometimes we probably have a bad taste in our mouth from the experience we've had in corporate America, and we're like, well, I don't want to replicate that,
absolutely.
but I really don't know what to do. And I
Right.
would I
So
would recommend you reach out to you.
absolutely, absolutely. Because what I've found is you're right. People will have that thought that, oh, I don't want to do what I did, like what I
Right.
experienced. But when you're busy, when you have a lot of work, when we're getting toward the end of the calendar year, and if you've got regulation mandated training that needs to get done, those things, right? What you remember, what you experience, fall by the wayside. Best practices, people are not taught best practices, like they're not out there online, right? And so, or they're washed down versions of it. And so I focus on what is the unique need. I'm a firm believer, one size does not fit all. And so I can't sleep at night telling people, oh yeah, if you just do this for business A, B, C, and D, I can't sleep at night. It has to be, what does A need? What does B need? What does Delon and his business need? Like,
Right. Absolutely. A new leader, I think. Um, so let's talk a little bit about adult learning, right?
yeah.
How much, so if somebody's thinking about doing a program, how long should they be providing content to an adult audience before they ask a question or get some engagement or do a small group study or take a break or something? Because I've been in some that are really long and we're like, can we have a break, please? What little tidbits could you give us around that?
Yeah, I would say so. If we focus just on the individual and like, instead of opening with today, we're going to talk about these things, right? I would say come in with asking your audience questions, right? Like get in early, make chit chat with a couple people here and there, right? But as everyone is starting, open with casual conversation. Michael, I'm just curious. We're gonna talk about training today, but what's your experience as a trainer?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, okay. So you had that experience. Well, I'm curious, who else in the room has had similar experiences or who's had a different experience? So you're engaging them, you're paying attention to what their experience is as opposed to you being front and center or your content. And that's one of the ways that you draw your audience in and you get them to trust you and they're motivated to learn because they're like, oh yeah, this person is focused on me.
Right. Yeah. This actually, I might actually learn something from this one, right? And
Right.
I have found a lot of time it really is the presenter. A great presenter can take boring information and make it compelling. And
Absolutely.
it's connecting. I mean, just like in marketing, right? We have to connect with our audience,
Mhm.
build trust before we ever make an ask, because otherwise they're not listening to us. We sound like Charlie
Not at
Brown,
all.
right? And
Right.
I've had some trainings from Charlie Brown's teacher, I think, in the past, because it's just like, oh, so boring.
Yes.
And so it's not always about being flamboyant and out there. It's about
No.
being compelling. And you as the presenter, being passionate at one level about what you're trying to communicate because you know the value and the impact it's going to make, understanding that audience, and you're going to draw them in and help them. And what it does for the business is it makes the business more effective, more efficient,
Yes.
a
Yes.
better culture, which I think a lot of businesses are really struggling with. Do you find that?
Yeah, you asked the question, and this is a question that comes up all the time is why aren't businesses using best practices? And it's that bottom line, right? I think it's very I can appreciate that an executive would look at a training budget and say, let's pull that money from the training budget because we need it over here on this. The reality is think of if you've got employees in your business and they are not trained well, I should say, they're not using what the training includes. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to provide poor customer service, all the things that costs you money at the end. It costs you money. And so that's one of the biggest mistakes that, I think happens so often that I really, I would hope that decision makers would recognize is let's not invest in paying 10 grand to have this fun person come in and do a three-ring circus, but rather use the money and invest in quality training and best practices of your trainers and get them the skills that they need to really support your organization.
Yeah. And the other thing I think about the entertainer type thing is that's typically a one and done thing. They come in, big
Absolutely.
spike, versus I think what you're training, what you would propose, I think, is
Yeah.
a more structured, ongoing, whether it's a month, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years,
Mm.
but a culture of training and saying, okay, here's every quarter we're going to do a little 60-minute, 90-minute
Yeah.
training. Here's what we're talking about. Here's the growth you're going to see. Here's homework or what, I don't know. Is that kind of more along the lines of
Oh,
what you're?
absolutely, absolutely. And it's, tying in, people come at this point in our society, people are looking for organizations that not only support their skill set and their career growth, but also support their personal development.
Mhm.
And so if you have an organization that focuses on learning, full comprehensive learning, it's going to focus on that organizational need of skills, transferable skills, right? Communication, leadership, management. And then let's also offer some personal development opportunities. It doesn't have to be the mainstay, but what one person's interest is not another person's interest. But by doing that, providing that comprehensive approach, you're creating a culture of learning, right? And so I want to encourage people, everyone rolls their eyes when they hear the word training, right? And it's because of all the things we're talking about. But rather, I would say, let's focus on developing a culture of learning,
Mm.
learning across the career life cycle.
I like that. A culture of learning, because that's what we all, because learning hopefully plays into growth. When we learn something,
Yes,
grow, right? We homeschooled for years. My wife still homeschools, and our philosophy around homeschooling really is our job is to teach our children how to learn.
that's it.
And from there, the world is their oyster, right? They can do whatever they want. And my sons are just proof of it. My eldest son's my chief operating officer, and he learns stuff all the time and teaches me. And he's like,
Yep,
his favorite word is, I'll figure it out.
that's it.
And he learns how to do things. And that's, yeah. So now I have zero concern about him in life. He's going to knock it out
Absolutely.
whatever he does. So,
Uh,
but he can never leave our company. So that's another issue. So I think business owners need to really understand this culture of learning and
yeah,
how to develop it and how to implement it in their organization, because it is going to pay off on the bottom line. When you have a
it will.
better culture, you're going to have better, customer service, higher sales. You're going to have more retention of your
Yes.
employees, and you're going to be a place that attracts high quality people who want to grow because of the environment you put together.
Absolutely.
Dr. Grant,
Absolutely.
I know you and I can talk for a long, long time because I still have ideas and thoughts. Tell us, how does somebody take that next step with you? Where do they find more information about you, your programs, your training, your philosophies, and all that? Where do they go to connect with you?
Yeah. Visit drdrcarriegraham.com. Come on over there. There are multiple ways to look at my information and services. There are also some free downloadables that can help get you started for those for an initial step, or for those individuals who are solopreneurs, right? And their budgets are a little bit tighter, and that's okay. But I firmly believe they deserve the same skills and information as a larger corporation. So go to my website. You can schedule time to meet with me. And I always tell people, don't worry about having things perfect to talk to me. You schedule a calm consultation, and people have always said, Dr. Graham, whenever we are done talking, I always feel better. And you're so relaxed. And that's my goal, is I want to remove the anxiety and stress around training, and make it something that's easy to do as well as effective.
That's awesome. All right. drcarriegraham.com. Really simple domain. I love that. Go there. Find out more about the training she offers, and how you can develop a culture of learning in
Yes.
organization. That is very cool. We're going to leave with those words: a culture of learning.
Yes.
Dr. Graham, thank you for being who you are, for pouring into other people, and showing up passionately for what you do. I can tell you're a great trainer of trainers. So thanks for being my guest today on Expert Speak.
Oh my goodness, Michael, thank you so much. It's been quite the blessing to spend time with you and chat. And yes, I'd love to meet your audience members as well.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to Expert Speak. Tune in again next week for another tremendous episode. Take care and God bless.